Welcome to a series that we call the End of Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation verse by verse to try our best to see what it is we can expect to happen in the end times and what it is we should be doing in the end times. Jesus tells us to have a heart for prophecy and to truly understand what our role is in all of God's plan, because God has a plan, and He has from the very beginning, and you're a part of it, I'm a part of it, and Jesus tells us to have a heart to understand what that part might be. Now, as we've gone through the book of Revelation, where we are, I can't go back and recap everything because we made it to 13, but roughly, John has been taken up in the throne room of God, where he's given a chance to look around, and he notices God has a scroll in his hand with 7 seals, and it is only Jesus who is worthy to open that scroll. And as those seals are broken, we see events take place on earth, mostly caused by the evil hearts of men. Once that scroll is open, what's written within the scroll is the divine coming of God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven, just like the plan has always been laid out. And we see that in the form of 7 trumpets. And we get to, and as those 7 trumpets blast by 7 angels, events take place on the earth that they're pretty catastrophic, and these are caused by God and angels and those who do God's work for Him. And then we get to the 7th trumpet, where it is the coming of Jesus Christ, and there's a pause in the story where we're introduced to many characters in this story. We're introduced to the woman, who is Israel, the child, who is Jesus, the dragon, who is Satan. And then we're finally introduced to a beast, and this beast of the sea is where we're at right now. Now, before we get into chapter 13 and the beast of the sea, I just want to remind you that all of chapter 12 clearly spells out that the dragon is trying to devour what the woman gave birth to. So the dragon is trying to devour Israel and devour Jesus and devour all of the offspring of Jesus. So that's you, that's me. It's a very clear message in 12. If you haven't watched the last couple episodes, it's very important to get this message that ultimately what takes place is the devil wants to be God, and war breaks out in heaven, and he and a third of the angels are cast to the earth, where now he is the prince of the earth. And he wants to set up his kingdom and not allow God's kingdom to be set up. So he will declare himself to be God. And he does that through a beast. And that's where we're at right now. So we're going to pick it up in chapter 13. We did verse 1 last week. We're going to go into verse 2, but we're going to go back to verse 13 as well. So we'll pick it up in 13, verse 1. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. Now, I want to start off by talking about this beast and let you know that there's a lot of assumptions that are made in biblical commentary around the beast of the sea. We're not going to do that. We're not going to run along with mainstream media and say, well, somebody proposed this idea 50 years ago, therefore it must be true. There's a lot of ideas, and as you know, we don't use commentary in this series. We always use the Bible as a reference, because there's a lot of assumptions that can be made in the symbolism of this beast, because the beast is a symbol. He's a spiritual symbol of a world power run by humans. There's not actually a 7-headed beast running around with 10 horns that looks like a leopard and has feet like a bear and a mouth like a lion. It's a spiritual symbol, and it's very important we don't jump on bandwagons about the assumptions of these symbols. And it's very important that we don't say, well, because somebody said so, it must be true. We're only using the Bible as a reference here. So we're going to stay away from assumptions. Now, with that being said, using the Bible as a reference, when we take a look at this beast is spelled out way more clearly in chapter 17. So, and I kind of said this when we first started on chapter 13, that we're not going to, I'm not going to say, well, here's who I think the beast is. Here's what I think it is. We're going to wait until we get to the till we get clear description on what this beast is and just kind of get a big roundabout view of what this looks like. And then I'll tell you my thoughts. But I'm going to wait till we have all that crystal clear first. So with that being said, if we reference Revelation 17, which we're going to, we're not going to jump ahead a lot. And then if we also go back to Daniel 7, like we did last time, the 10 horns are 10 kings, period. It's clearly spelled out. Daniel, in Daniel 7, says they're 10 kings. Revelation 17 says they're 10 kings. So they're 10 kings. And then the 7 heads are 7 kingdoms. Now, that's kind of what we know so far, is we know that there's this beast. It's made up of 10 kings and 7 kingdoms. And that's about what we know right now. The dragon gave him authority. So we're talking about the Antichrist. We're talking about a world power that has been given authority by the devil to set up his kingdom on earth. So we got to be very clear on what the goal of this beast is. It's a savage, wild beast. As a matter of fact, if you look at the actual language, the Greek language here, when he says he saw a beast rising up, it's a wild beast is what they talk. It's savage, it's ravenous, and it has no mercy. It's bloodthirsty. So let's just kind of keep going. So right now, it's don't think, well, I got to know who it is, and I got to know what the numbers mean, and I got to know what all these, like, you don't. Like, just, it'll all be crystal clear by the time we get to the end. But right now, all you need to know is 10 kings, 7 kingdoms. That's all you need to know at this point. So let's go to verse 2. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. Now, if we go back to Daniel, and we went deeply into Daniel, so we're not going to go back deep into it today like we did last time, so watch last episode. But Daniel sees 4 beasts, and the first 3 beasts are described as a leopard, a bear, and a lion. And then a different beast come out, and this is the kind of the same beast. Daniel sees this same beast, the beast of the sea, coming out with his 10 horns. Now I want to make that note because, again, I'm not going to jump on some assumptions here. What we're going to say is that it's fairly well known through looking at Daniel that these beasts that Daniel sees are empires. It's very well spelled out. These are empires. These are kingdoms. They're great kingdoms. Now, the reason they're even relevant at all in the Bible, there are a lot of kingdoms on the earth. The reason they're even relevant at all is because they hammer on Israel. God, the woman, Israel, that's what all this prophecy on earth is really kind of. It's like the ground zero of prophecy. So if there's a kingdom hammering on somebody on the other side of the world, it's probably not in the Bible. But when these kingdoms hammer on Israel, which has been the history of the woman or the history of Israel, so the devil's always tried to devour it. So we got Babylon, we have the Persians, we have the Greeks, then we have the Romans. These are all beasts that it's safe to say that they're kind of in there. Now, we can't say, well, the first beast was Rome and the second beast was Persia. We can't say that. There's a lot of assumptions to be made. So people grab like the symbols from flags, or they grab, oh, well, this particular country, used a symbol of this at one point, so it must be that. That's not what we're doing. Because it's not important that we go back and we interpret what the beasts of Daniel are. What we do know is that there were great empires on the earth, most likely Greece, Persia, Babylon, and Rome. But then when we look at these beasts, what we see is their description of their body parts resemble the beasts from Daniel. Now that's important because, again, we're only using the Bible as a reference. So when we look at verse 2, now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. We can kind of see that this is a world power made up of Persians, Greeks, Romans. It's a world power. That's really a safe interpretation because that's what Daniel saw as well, was he saw these world powers individually come up one by one. But then what John is seeing, he's seeing these world powers combined as one. And it's real important that we kind of see that this is a world power made up of 10 kings and 7 kingdoms. Now, right now, all we need to understand is that there's this beast coming up out of the sea. The sea is a multitude of people on the earth. Essentially, they come up out of the multitude of languages, tongues, and cultures. And we also see that in Revelation 17. So that's not an assumption. And we also see it in Revelation 4. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing a world power that is going to devour, for sure, Israel, but the entire planet. And it is made up of 10 kings and 7 kingdoms. And it's given authority by the devil. So this is not a good beast. This isn't like a world order that we can all run to and embrace. However, the world will embrace it. Or let's go back to 2. Now the beast which I saw was like the leopard. His feet were like the feet of the bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. So this is a beast of the earth made up of leaders, kings, 10 kings and 7 kingdoms, given divine authority from satanic spiritual things. This is a bad situation going on here, because ultimately what this beast will do is, what Satan will do is he'll establish his throne in the temple in Jerusalem, and then that's when everything gets really awful. So we're just kind of introduced to who this beast is, this Antichrist, this satanic human who will then declare himself to be God. And the world will worship him. So all we need to know right now is we got a new world order made up of 10 kings. It's satanic in nature, and 7 kingdoms, and it will devour the earth, and it will declare itself to be God. So that's kind of where we're at. Now, where we're going to get into next time is we're going to get a little identifying as this beast. One of the heads is going to take a fatal head wound, and that's that's a whole deep subject, because again, the heads are kingdoms, not kings. So we're going to kind of take a look at what is going on with this fatal head wound in verse 3. Because there's a lot of identifying features about a fatal head wound. You know, as humans, as we walk the earth, we can see that take place. And it'll be interesting to understand, well, what is that and what is happening with that. So I hope this is helping. I really just kind of want to take this episode and simplify it. We don't have to have all the answers right now. You know, when I started the book of Revelation, it was really, I think, the 3rd episode that through prayer, God just told me, just follow the path, do not get off the path. And this is the first time, really, well, the second time we're introduced to this beast. It's the first time we're given any sort of description of the beast. But just understand that there's not a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns coming up out of the sea to devour the earth. It's a spiritual symbol of the satanic nature of what this empire will be like. So that's kind of all we need to see at this point. And again, stick with us. It'll all come crystal clear. You just can't jump to it. There's a lot of pieces of this beast still missing. But we'll get to them. We'll definitely get to them. We're going to spend a good amount of time on chapter 13 talking about the beast of the sea and then the beast of the land. And then once we get to 17, it's going to become crystal clear what's going on here and geographically where all this is located at. So love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm just kind of trying to keep the beast simple. I don't want to, we're not making assumptions. I just kind of want to say that again, is we're not going to say, oh, well, this is the Roman Empire, or this is, like, we're not making assumptions at all. We're just going to read the text for what it is. We're going to use only the Bible as a reference, and we're not going to jump on these commentary bandwagons that oftentimes Hollywood grabs a hold of, and then without understanding Revelation, we just assume it's true, and we're not going to make any of those assumptions. We're only going to determine who this beast is based on biblical text only. Welcome to a series that we call The End Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation verse by verse to try our best to see what it is we can expect to happen in the end times, as well as what we should be doing in the end times, because we all have a role. You have a purpose on this earth in the advancing of God's kingdom, one way or the other. You're part of that plan, and I'm part of that plan. Whether we're in the end times or not, the advancement of His kingdom is still coming, and it's still playing out every single day. But it's important that we do see ourselves in the end times, because we do have a role in that, and it's a very, very important role. Literally, the term tribulation is the warring between the Antichrist and the saints. He's given authority by Satan to kill the saints and to kill those who stand up for Jesus Christ. So it's important that we see ourselves there. And what is that role? Oftentimes we look at, we're just raptured out and it's up to somebody else to deal with that. That is not the case. We've talked about that. We're in chapter 13, but in chapters 4, 7, 11, and 12, we showed that it's at the end of tribulation that rapture takes place. But regardless of where you are on that, it's irrelevant. Assuming we are here during the end times, it's important that we understand what's taking place here in chapter 13. Now, when we were in chapter 12, we were introduced to three characters. The woman, Israel. She gave birth to a child, Jesus, and the dragon tried to stop that from happening, Satan, who then could not, and then he sought to devour her offspring, and that's you and I. That's the descendants of Jesus Christ. Those are the Christians, and he seeks to devour them. And then immediately after we're shown that the war breaks out in heaven. Now, of course, time is irrelevant in heaven, so this is kind of, war broke out back when Adam and Eve were on the earth, and then Satan and a third of the angels were cast to the earth because there's nowhere for them until that bottomless pit is, of course, opened up. So they're on the earth seeking to devour, but ultimately Satan is desiring to be like God. And that's where we're at now. We're in Revelation 13, and we're exposed to the beast of the sea. Now, we talked in 1, the beast of the sea, and we'll just pick it up there. Then I stood on the sands of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads blasphemous name. Now, what this beast is it's essentially 10 kingdoms. These are 10 kings who are making up this beast, and they're ultimately, what we saw in Daniel, is 3 of those are overthrown. But ultimately, one of these leaders will stand up and be the Antichrist, and the others will just kind of be his cronies, so to say. So we'll pick it up in 2. Now, the beast which I saw was a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And that's where we left off now. So he's given this great authority by Satan to essentially establish Satan's kingdom instead of God's kingdom. So that's where we left off, and now we're going to pick it up in verse 3. I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshipped the dragon, who gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" So we're going to talk about verse 3, this fatal head wound. This is a critical piece to, as Christians, identifying the Antichrist. It's a critical piece in seeing, for the rest of the people that will be worshiping the Antichrist, why they think he is like Christ. Because what did Jesus do? He took mortal wounds, and he died, and he was raised from the dead. And what we're going to see here is one of these heads is going to take a mortal wound, and then that mortal wound is going to be healed. Now, let's start with saying Satan does not have the power to raise people from the dead. And that's a critical piece of this. So it's not like somebody died and then Satan raised him from the dead. It's definitely, it's trickery. There's powers of principalities at play here, but Satan does not have the ability to raise people from the dead. And it's very important we see that. Nor does Satan have the ability to resurrect himself either. So let's kind of take this and see, well, what's going on here? Because we're going to see this again a couple other times in chapter 13 as well as in chapter 14 of this head. So I like to look at the actual Greek words that are written, or Hebrew words, depending on which book we're looking at. But here in Revelation, it's Greek. So we're going to take a look at what the Greek words were here. And as we look at chapter 3, it says one of the heads. Now, the word for heads is cephalon, and it's the capto, it's the cap, it's head. It's literally or figuratively, and that's very important, the head. So it's literally the cap, the head of the body, but it's figuratively also used as the head of kind of an organization or a head of a military, that kind of thing. Let's go on. And it appeared to be fatally wounded. Now, this word wounded is esphagmanon, and this is to slay, kill by violence. So this isn't like a thing where like a kingdom just ended and therefore it took a fatal head wound. And a lot of people speculate that. That's not what this is. This word is literally to slay or kill with violence. That's what's taking place here. So there's a violent assault on the Antichrist, potentially the Antichrist, and we're going to kind of come back to that, of what is this head. And there's a lot of speculation. And again, we're not going to look at speculation. We're not looking at commentaries. We're just looking at what the Word of God is. So we're not making any assumptions here. Most likely it's the Antichrist. Could be a country. But that, I think we get back to that slain by violence thing is pretty significant. And he takes a mortal head wound. Now this is mortal as death, or physical or spiritual death. And the word wound is plege. It's a blow or it's a stripe, a wound, an affliction, a plague, a stroke by implication, wounding for calamity. So there's some sort of violent attack that takes place on one of the heads of this beast. And we're just going to kind of take a look at that for a little bit. Now, first and foremost, this is a mimic of Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ died and was raised from the dead. Now, I'm going to go back to Satan cannot raise people from the dead. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit to the second beast, the beast of the land, for a second, because he makes people worship the head that was wounded. And there's something that's freaky out then that takes place here. So we're going to jump to 13, verse 14. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast. So it's a deceptive thing. He's using trickery here. Telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image of the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. And that's pretty critical too. So now, not only do we see that this head is taking a fatal wound by violence, but it's fatal wound with a weapon now. Now we're looking at some sort of weapon. And let's keep going in 15. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Now, we're going to come back to what is this image of the beast, and how is it that the second beast gave life to it. Now, keep in mind, John's writing this 2,000 years ago, so there wasn't any sort of technology. There obviously weren't any sort of technology that would allow you to do that, but there is now. There's definitely technology today that will allow you to bring up an image of a person and give life to it and have it speak and cause everybody to worship it. It's a pretty simple thing to do with very basic computer technology. I don't know if that's what that is, but I do know that Satan does not have the ability to raise anybody from the dead. And again, if we go back to verse 15, he was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast. Not the beast, but the image of the beast. That the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Very fascinating verse there. But let's kind of go back to, and we'll dig deep into what that is when we get there, but we're going to kind of go back to this, the first mention of this mortal head wound here in verse 3, chapter 13, verse 3. Now, I want to say there's a couple possibilities, biblically speaking, that this is. It's easy to say that this is actually a person that takes a fatal head wound. That's an easy thing to say. That's going to be my guess. Again, I can't say for sure what this is, but I can say that the Greek words talk about a cap or a head that takes a violent attack with a weapon, and then an image is made of whoever took that violent attack, and then life was given to that image. That's a very important piece. Now, if it is a man, what we see is this is a very identifying feature. Now, one thing that makes me terribly sad about these verses in chapter 13 is how easy people today follow lies. I mean, it just seems like I can get on and say anything. And as long as I put it on the internet, people are going to believe it, because there's institutions like Facebook, they're just going to feed that stuff to you. As long as you're clicking, they're going to keep feeding it to you. So because of social media and things like that, I can really say anything I want. I don't need to support it with facts anymore. That's not even a thing. People will buy into anything that a person says as long as it agrees with what they think. And I find that terribly sad, because there are many professed, I'm going to use the quotes, Christians who are going to easily worship the image of the beast. Easily, because it's going to feed them what they want. It's going to feed them what they want. And it's terribly sad, because the world will marvel at this, and they will begin to worship that beast. And even though they know what Scripture says about Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago being nailed to a cross and raising himself from the dead 3 days later, even though they know that, they're still going to worship the beast, because they're going to marvel at the fact that here he took a fatal head wound and he shows up to work the next day. But they don't actually see him, they see his image. And that's a very important. People are so easily deceived today. I mean, if we would have been making this video 10 years ago, I wouldn't even be talking about this, because people looked at facts. When I was in college and I wrote a paper, I couldn't just say words. I had to support it with some sort of something. It had to have some sort of support from some sort of doctrinal thesis or something. Today, I get to say anything I want. As long as I can throw it out on YouTube or Facebook, people are going to buy it. And it's sad. But that is what's going to take place, because people today are more focused and worshiping of political leaders than ever before. Ever before. More so, Christians are more worshiping of political leaders than I've ever seen in my life. It's a tragedy, but they will easily be led astray by some sort of political figure, who then will take a fatal head wound, and then because they will see his image speaking to them the next day, they will begin to worship him. So much so that they're willing to kill for him. That's pretty messed up. I mean, ultimately what's taking place when we get to this second beast, the second beast is the one you really need to worry about, because he's going to be the one that's going to make you take the mark of the beast. He's going to be the one that makes you worship the beast. He's going to be the one that really pulls all the strings. But it's ultimately going to lead to most of the world, again, I'm going to use my quotes, Christians are going to easily go worship the beast, because he's going to feed them what they want to hear. And that's what they're doing now to many degrees. But there's going to be a few who are going to say, you know what, that is not the Christ. That is not the Christ. Because Jesus said in Matthew 24, many will say, oh, look, there's the Christ. Because he's going to appear, he's going to be able to speak, he's going to look like he resurrected himself from the dead, and he's going to be sitting up a throne in the temple of God in Jerusalem, and people are going to worship him like crazy. like crazy. They'll do anything for them. I mean, we see politically now, gosh, we see families being divided and almost a civil war in our country because of a couple political leaders. And now, what do you think this is going to look like? Now fast forward to this event. I mean, people are so easily led astray today, you know, goodness gracious. Now, if you all of a sudden are a world leader and everybody's following you, and then you take a fatal head wound and suddenly you show up to work the next day, it's going to be a pretty easy thing to do to get people to worship this thing, because it's pretty easy to get people to worship political leaders now. And they don't even resurrect themselves from the dead. They just speak words and people just buy it. So, you know, this, in my opinion, is really one of the most tragic events that takes place in the end times, because it's about, you know, when we read about the death of a lot of people, or we read about, you know, a third of the earth being destroyed, or we read about, you know, the rest of mankind who doesn't have the mark of the beast being destroyed, you know, or the rest of mankind that doesn't have the mark of God being destroyed. You know, that's tragic and all, but that's very temporal. It's very temporary. I mean, if somebody says denounce Christ or I'm chopping your head off, and I say, well, no way, Jose, and they chop my head off, well, now I just spend eternity in glory. But this means eternity in hell, for a very temporal satisfaction, a very, very temporal satisfaction. Because again, you know, 10 years ago, if somebody took a fatal wound and you put him on the internet and suddenly you can see him and he's talking, you know, we would have said, well, hey, wait a second, what's going on there? But today, people buy that. They'll buy right into it. They'll easily be deceived, just like they're easily deceived today. It's very, very tragic and sad. But that's kind of what we got going on here. You know, other possibilities looking at biblical thing is that this head is a country, that the country takes a fatal wound, and then the country comes back. But, you know, again, I'm just going to go back to the, you know, the words, the actual Greek words. You know, the head, it's a cap, it's the top of the body. Takes a violent wound with the weapon. And that's a very significant thing to say. It's not kind of a roundabout way of describing things. It's a very specific description of an event. And I think that's going to, as Christians, what we're going to see is two different Christians will see two different things. One Christian will see that he is like Christ. Let's worship him. The other one will say, that is not Christ. That is the Antichrist. And they'll declare Jesus Christ, and then guess what's going to happen? As many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. You know, that's what tribulation is all about. So ultimately, what you're going to see in tribulation is you're going to see a 3.5-year war between the Antichrist and his world army, and many, many, many Christians that are following, if not most Christians following him. And then you're going to see the remnant of Jesus Christ and 144,000 Jews marked by God warring against that system. They will prevail for 3.5 years. And then after 3.5 years, the Antichrist will overcome them and kill them. And then they'll be resurrected on the third day, and that's where the rapture occurs. So, you know, and again, those things we talked about, we talked about that back in 10, 11, and 12. So that's, you know, that's an old topic, but that's kind of what we're looking at here. So the beasts of the sea, made up of 10 kings, one of them will take a fatal head wound and then be resurrected. And we will see that image, not in person, there's an image. We won't see that person, because again, Satan cannot resurrect anybody from the dead. So this will be an image. It's the second beast that we really got to worry about. He will breathe life into this image. He will make everybody take the mark of the beast. He will make everybody worship the beast. He will rule, essentially, the entire planet by showing this Antichrist as the Christ. This morning, as I was preparing for this particular message on Revelation chapter 13, I was praying a lot about it. And as I prayed about it, the message that I got from God was really clear. There's some times where God speaks to me and he speaks to you, and it's so incredibly clear. And this was one of those times. And really the message I got from God is it's all about forgiveness. This whole spiritual war, this entire thing taking place on the earth, this war that started in heaven and ended up as a battleground for your and I's soul, is about forgiveness. And it's really important that we see that as we start to look at what it is about the beast that makes people worship him. So stick with me for a while, but where we're at in this series is we're in chapter 13 and we're introduced to the beast of the sea. Now the beast of the sea, what we know about the beast of the sea is it's made up of 10 kings. One of those kings will ultimately rule over the entire world as the Antichrist, and that particular king will take a mortal head wound. Now, the devil does not have the ability to resurrect from the dead. Only God and Jesus Christ have the ability to resurrect anybody from the dead. The devil does not have that ability. So what they do is they make an image of the beast, and then everybody worships that image. And this is probably using a lot of technology, that kind of thing. And we talked about that last episode. Where we're at right now is what is it about this beast that'll make people worship him? So we're going to pick it up in 3 where we left off. I saw one of the heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" Now, this is a very interesting passage, because why this particular message is so important is because what we are seeing in the world right now is we are seeing Christians, I'm going to again use the air quotes there because they are already lining themselves up to easily follow the Antichrist. Not kind of follow them, but easily be led astray. Because what we're seeing right now is, like you, many of us were very concerned about this past election. I'm seeing more pastors and more people who are professed Christians post more on social media about political things than they have ever posted about God or Jesus Christ. Now, what that means is they're already relying on the world. They're relying on people. This war, this spiritual war, is taking place on the world. It's right here in this room I'm standing in. It's right in the room you're standing in. It's throughout the entire planet. It is about the souls of men and women. And when the dragon can lead them astray, it's like leading a pig off to slaughter. It's like you just lay a trail of food and it just leads straight to the slaughterhouse, and people easily will just follow that trail, eating up the slop until they get to that slaughterhouse, and there's a point where it's too late. And at any point, it's about forgiveness. At any point, you can change that direction, and it's about forgiveness. So who can war against the beast? Well, what everybody will see is they will worship a political figure, much like many people do today. They will worship a political figure who will ultimately declare himself to be God. He will sit in the temple of God in Jerusalem. He will declare himself to be God. And for 3.5 years, the world will worship him. Who can war against the beast? There's only one group of people who can do it. It is the remnant of Jesus Christ. It is a small group of people who will say, you know what, that is not God. That's not God. Jesus Christ is God. And the rest of the world will say, well, you're crazy. This is clearly, we need to worship the beast, much like they do political figures today. I've heard and seen Christians talk about political figures as if they're prophets or they're somehow sent from God to save them. Let's be very clear. There's not one human on this planet who can save you. There's not one human on this planet who can pull you away from God. And we look at political figures, we put so much faith in them that on one side we say, oh, this political figure can destroy us. We're so scared of this political figure. Or this political figure can save us. Let's just worship this political figure. But in the end, neither can do it. Neither can do either one of those things. Just like they can't resurrect themselves from the dead, they cannot save you. The only thing that can save you is the blood of Jesus Christ. That's what this entire book is about. The entire book is about the coming of Jesus Christ. When the devil was cast to the earth, Because war broke out in heaven, and now that war is taking place right now, and it is over the souls of men and women. And what we're going to see, and what we're already seeing, is many people, many Christians, many non-Christians, the world will follow the beast. The world will worship the beast. But it is only a few. It is the remnant of Jesus Christ who will stand up, profess Jesus Christ to be Lord, and guess who the only enemy of the Antichrist will be? Them, the saints. It's the only enemy. We will be the ones who are able to war against the beast. And be quite honest, I think we're going to be able to kick some behind in this war, because God gives us the power to do so for 3.5 years. It's going to be a war where you're going to want to be on the right side. You're going to feel like you're on the right side if you're following the beast, but you are not. You are not on the right side. What we're going to see about the beast is he looks like a lamb, but he speaks like a dragon. That's why the world follows him, because so many Christians are looking at political figures as if they're Christians, they're trying to save their church, they're trying to save them, but in reality, they're leading you to the slaughterhouse, is where they're leading you to. It is the remnant of Jesus Christ versus the entire world. And that remnant will prevail for 3.5 years, and then eventually the beast will overcome and take them. And that's right when that rapture takes place. We receive our glorified body, and then we rule on this earth with Jesus Christ, because who can war against the Antichrist? I can. You can. It's not that complicated. But if you're on the wrong side of things, you absolutely can't. You're a pig being led off to the slaughterhouse. You have to start seeing it that way, because you can't put your faith in political figures. You can't put your faith in this world. Let go of the world. You know, I try to look at the way I look at this world is almost like I'm an ambassador to heaven. This isn't my home. This isn't where I belong. I belong in the throne room with God. That's where I belong. I belong in heaven with God. That's where I belong. But I'm here representing heaven. Now my pay is I'm receiving treasures in heaven, and then eventually I will go back home, and my job here will be finished. And you have to start seeing that. Let go of the world. It's the only way that you're going to be able to see who the true Christ is you have to be able to let go of the world. It's so incredibly important. If you can't, if you are so drawn into what's going on in the media, if you're so drawn in to what your favorite political leader is saying, if you're so drawn in to what your least favorite political leader is saying, and you're scared of that, or you're hopeful in the other, you will easily be led off to the slaughterhouse. Because what takes place is the beast deceives the world. You will be deceived, easily deceived. How do we avoid that? Keep your eyes on Jesus Christ. Take them off the news. Take your eyes off those political figures. Put your eyes on Jesus Christ. Turn it off. Turn off the world. Focus on God. That's how you do it. Because in the end, I will be on the side of the remnant of Jesus Christ. If it's me and 10 others, so be it. Against the world, we will prevail for 3.5 years and overcome them, whether there be thousands of us. Now, what I do believe, and what I know through scripture, is there'll be at least 144,000 Jews marked by God on our side, and then there'll be a multitude of all nations, tongues, and tribes on our side. So it's not just going to be 10, it's going to be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people going, saying, you know what, that is not God. That's not God. The rest of the world will think he is, and they will follow him, and they will worship him. Christians will worship a political figure, just like we're seeing them do to many degrees right now. Now, why is this so important? So, I mean, obviously eternity is very important. Obviously eternity in the presence of a holy, loving God is very important. But in that 3.5 years, who can war against the beast? Well, we're going to continue. I'm just going to go ahead a little bit. We will come back to this next week. We're going to continue, and we'll pick it up in 4 and we'll go on to 6. So they worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. That's that 3.5 years. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. And it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. The world will worship him. The world will follow him. They will love him. They will adore him. He is going to save them in their eyes. But what he's really doing is he's laying down a trail of slop, and he's leading you like a pig to the slaughterhouse. And if you don't see it that way, we all want to be on the right side. We all want to pick the side of good over evil, and we're going to be thinking we're picking the side of good. But the reality is, keep your eyes on Jesus Christ. If you're picking the side of the world, you're on the wrong side. You're on the wrong side. Turn off the news. They're just feeding you garbage. They're just feeding you what you want to hear. Turn off social media. Their algorithms are just feeding you what you want to hear. It's slop, by the way. It's slop leading you to the trail, to the slaughterhouse is what they're feeding you. Turn it off. Just turn it off. Turn your eyes to Jesus Christ, because in the end, and this is what we started with, it's about forgiveness. Jesus Christ was given authority to open the scroll and break the 7 seals as the slain lamb, because it is only the slain lamb that has the ability to cleanse you from your sins through the forgiveness and through the blood of Jesus Christ, so you can boldly enter into the holy presence of a loving God. That's what this entire book is about, because there's a day when this 3.5-year war ends that we will spend eternity with Jesus Christ. He will come back, and he'll just grab the beast, and he'll grab dragon, and he'll throw him in the pits of hell. And along with the rest of the world that was following the beast, they'll go there too. And then only the remnant of Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ himself will rule on this earth for 1,000 years. And then we will then receive our treasures in heaven. That's what I'm in on. That's what I'm a part of. Shut off the news. Shut off your political figure. He's not going to save you. Nobody's going to save you. Nobody can take you away from God. Nobody can harm you. Nobody can save you. It is only the blood of Jesus Christ that can do that. It is only that. Take your eyes off of the world, because there's a war coming. And the war is between the remnant of Jesus Christ and the rest of the world. As long as your eyes are on that world, you're a pig being let off to slaughter. Take your eyes off of the world. Let go of it. Look at yourself like you're an ambassador to heaven. This isn't your home. It's kind of like if I was an ambassador from France and I was in America representing France. Whatever happens in America is what happens in America. I'm not from here. Eventually I'm going to go home. Eventually I'm going to go back to heaven, where my treasures in heaven are stored up. And all this world, I was just a representative of heaven. That's all it's about. War broke out in heaven. The devil and 1/3 of his angels were cast to the earth. And now there's a war taking place right now over your soul. If you're following the world, you're following the Antichrist. Take your eyes off of the world. Take your eyes off of the news. Take your eyes off of social media. Take your eyes off of the Antichrist. Put your eyes on Jesus Christ. It is the remnant of God. It's the remnant of Jesus Christ that will prevail. This war, in my opinion, is going to be awesome if you're on the side of God, because he is going to give you powers unlike anything you ever dreamed of, and you will prevail for 3.5 years before finally we lose this battle, only to be raptured up and then reign on earth with Jesus Christ for 1,000 years. But the only way you could do it, if you're focusing on the world, you're focusing on the Antichrist. Please know that. Satan is the prince of the earth. If you think you're safe because of a political figure, you're not. If you think you're in harm's way because of a political figure, you're not. Focus on Jesus Christ. Be the remnant of Jesus Christ. I'll see you on the battlefield, hopefully on the side of Jesus Christ. I pray that I don't see you on the battlefield on the other side, because again, we're going to prevail. We absolutely going to prevail, because it's right here in black and white. Who can war against the beast? This guy. This guy can do it. You can do it as well. It's what it's all about. But the only way we could do it is through the blood of the slain Lamb, who broke the seals and brought all this to fruition in the first place. Take your eyes off the world. Put them on Jesus Christ. It's the only way you're going to make it through this. Otherwise, if you're focusing on the world, it's just, the devil does this. He just lays down some slop, and then you eat it. And then he lays down some more slop, and then you eat it. And he keeps laying down. It's a trail. It's a trail of slop. And you feel like you're doing the right thing, and he's encouraging you, and he's telling you how good of a job you're doing, and he's telling you that you're fun. All your friends are saying, yay, this is the right way, we're all doing the right thing, and Facebook is telling you the same thing, and your favorite news is telling you the same thing, and your favorite political figure is telling you the same thing, and you're just walking straight into slaughterhouse. But it is the saints. Why would the Antichrist war against the saints? Why? Because he knows they are the only ones who will prevail over him and show the world that he is not God. Welcome to a series that we call The End of Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation verse by verse to try our best to see what it is we can expect to happen and what it is our roles will be in the end times, or the time Jesus refers to as the end of the age. And where we are in the book of Revelation is John has been taken up into the throne room of God, where we're given a chance to look around. He notices that God has a scroll in his hand with 7 seals. It is determined that only Jesus Christ is worthy to open that scroll. And as all 7 seals are broken, we see events take place on the earth, very tragic events caused by the evil hearts of men. And then once that scroll is opened up, what is written within that scroll is the divine coming of God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And we see that in the form of 7 trumpets. And we've watched all 7 trumpets be blasted as we've gone through this book. And we finally got to the 7th trumpet at Jesus' return. And then there's a pause in the story, and we're introduced to witnesses. We're introduced to the woman, who is Israel. She gives birth to a child, Jesus. We're introduced to the dragon, which is Satan, and we're told that war is broken out in heaven, and that Satan and 1/3 of the angels have been cast down to this earth where they have been this entire time. And now we're all kind of victims to that. And then we get introduced to the beast of the sea, and that's where we're at right now. What we've learned about the beast of the sea is it is made up of 10 kings. And one of those kings will take a fatal head wound, and the world will begin to worship that man. And that's where we're at right now. We're in chapter 13, and we're just going to pick it up where we left off in verse 4. So they worshiped the dragon, who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And he was given a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies. And he was given authority to continue 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme in his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. And it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. So what's going on with this guy? Well, let's just say he's been given authority by Satan to rule over the world. That's what's going on. Now we're gonna address this in 2 different ways. Now, first of all, it's 42 months. So this 3.5 years, we've talked about this a lot. There's a moment where he will sit in the temple of God and declare himself to be God. That's a very, very bad day for the world, specifically for those dwelling in Jerusalem. Now, that's that 3.5 year timeline. That's the timeline of tribulation. Well, what takes place during that time, and how do we know? He's speaking blasphemies. Now, we're going to kind of look into what are these blasphemies, because Ultimately, what's taking place is he's going to declare himself to be God, and that in itself is a blasphemy. So let's take a look at this. Now, the only reference of somebody, of a historical event where somebody declared themselves to be God in the Bible, and we only use the Bible as a reference, is when Jesus declared himself to be God. And we're going to take a look at when Jesus had been captured and he was found in the Sanhedrin. And we're going to look at what they accused him of blasphemy. Of course, it wasn't blasphemy because he was God. But what does this look like? Because what you're going to see is the Antichrist is going to mimic Christ. That's what makes him an Antichrist. So let's look at what Jesus does here. It's very important to understand what it is Jesus does to get an idea of what the Antichrist will be doing. Matthew 26, and we're going to pick it up in verse 57. And those who had laid hold of Jesus led him away to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance to the high priest's courtyard, and he went in and sat with his servants to see the end. Now the chief priests, the elders, and all the council sought false testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but found none. Even though many false witnesses came forward, they found none. But at last 2 false witnesses came forward and said, "This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. And the high priest arose and said to him, Do you answer nothing? What is it that these men testify against you? But Jesus kept silent. And the high priest answered and said to him, I adjure you by the living God that you tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, It is as you said. Nevertheless, I say to you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his clothes, saying, He has spoken blasphemy. What further need do we have of witnesses? Look now, you have heard his blasphemy. What do you think? They answered and said to him, He is deserving of death. Then they spat on his face and beat him, and others struck him with the palms of their hands, saying, Prophesy to us, Christ, who is the one who struck you? Now ultimately what's taking place here is the high priests and all the elders, they accused him of blasphemy. Why? Because he declared himself to be the Son of God. That is exactly what the Antichrist is going to do. He's going to do the exact same thing, and he has been given authority by Satan and will be possessed by Satan, which is why he's given authority by Satan to be able to do this. Now, how do we know? How do we know that this is kind of what Satan's plan is? Because it's clearly spelled out in Isaiah. If we take a look at Isaiah 14, starting in verse 12, How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, I will also sit on the mountain congregation on the furthest side of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High. That's what's in Satan's heart. His desire is to be like the Most High. And that's exactly what this blasphemy is going to look like. He's going to sit in the temple. He's going to declare himself to be the Christ. He's going to declare himself to be God. And he will be given authority over the entire planet. Now, what does he do with this authority? Well, it's pretty clear. It's spelled out, real obvious, that he's going to take that authority and he's going to use it to war against the saints. Well, why? The whole world will worship him. The whole world will bow down to him and say, that is the Christ. Look over there. Just like Jesus said in Matthew 24, look, there he is in the temple. There is the Christ. Just like Jesus said they will do. But there will be a few. There will be a remnant of Jesus Christ, the saints, who will say, that is not God. I don't know what that thing is. Probably the dragon, but it is not God. And of course, that is not going to bode well for the Antichrist, and he will war against them for 3.5 years. And we spent a lot of, that's what the tribulation is. It's the few, it's the remnant of Jesus Christ standing up for Jesus while the rest of the world bows down to the Antichrist, and then all that anger and hatred is going to be turned straight at you and I, the saints. And what does that look like? And we've talked about this a lot. Well, if we go back to Revelation 4, if we go back to Revelation 7, starting in verse 9, after these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude which no one could number, of all nations, tribes, peoples, and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palm branches in their hands, and crying out with loud voices, saying, Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. And then let's jump down to 13. Then one of the elders answered, saying to me, Who are these arrayed with white robes, and where did they come from? And I said to him, Sir, you know. So he said to me, These are the ones who come out of the great tribulation and washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. These are those who are killed by the Antichrist. There's going to, and again, we've talked about this a lot. Go back and look at the two witnesses. You're going to have 144,000 Jews marked by God. And then you're going to have a multitude of nations, tribes, and tongues professing Jesus Christ, Lord, not that guy. And then there's going to be war against the saints. But good news, we prevail for 3.5 years. God gives us some amazing powers to prevail. There's nothing the world can do to stop us from professing Jesus Christ as Lord. And it's such a hard battle for them to prevail over the saints that after 3.5 years, once God takes his protection off of us, and the only reason he does that is because the rapture is coming and Jesus is coming. But once he takes that protection off and they have the victory finally after 3.5 years, they celebrate like it's like a new Christmas to them. It's this new season of celebration. They exchange gifts and they party because these terrible saints who are professing Jesus is God is finally gone, and now we all can then go back to worshiping the beast. But of course, that's not how it's going to play out. After 3 days, we're resurrected, where we're raptured up, where we receive our glorified body, and the return of Jesus comes, and we reign on earth here for 1,000 years. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But what's taking place here in Revelation 13 is the beast of the sea. It's a 10-kingdom world order. One of those kings is going to be given authority by Satan. He's going to take a fatal head wound, and he's going to show up to work the next day. Now keep in mind, I've said this last couple episodes, Satan cannot resurrect people from the dead. Only God can do that. So it's an image. They make an image of the beast. When we get into the next beast we're going to talk about shortly, the beast of the land, that guy is the one kind of pulling all the strings, showing to worship this other guy. It's really a creepy thing. But guess what? The whole world falls for it, and they worship him, and they love him, and they adore him, and they can't stand the people declaring Jesus Christ to be Lord. So that's where we're at. We're going to take a look at this. We're going to continue to dig through these. I think we got one more episode on the beast of the sea before we get into the beast of the land. But how do we know that we're on the right side of things? Well, how do we know? Let's jump into 8. And all who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundations of the world. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. Now, as we've seen time and time again in Scripture, Jesus said it multiple times, is that there will be people who will profess Jesus, but they're not following Jesus. They're going to say, well, hey, you're when Judgment Day comes, they're going to say, well, God, I worship you. And he's going to say, I did not know you. So don't be fooled. Just because somebody's going to church and just because somebody says they're a Christian, most of those people are going to be following the Antichrist, easily following the Antichrist, because he's going to feed them the political desires they want. He's going to feed them all of their desires that they want. And then when they see him resurrect himself from the dead, which doesn't happen, it's a trick, using trickery, they're going to worship him. And they're going to love it. They're going to embrace it, and they're going to love it. And everything that they said they believe is going straight out the window. Only a few, only the remnant of God will stand for the truth of God and say, you know what, that guy, I don't care if you cut my head off. That is not God. Those will be the few that will then stand next to God in all his glory in that throne room, just like we were meant to do in the beginning. Love to hear your thoughts on all this. Put it in the comments below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. If you feel called to support this channel through Patreon, that link is below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests. So please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.